My name is Thomas Struth. I'm an artist and I live in Berlin. The art market is your unavoidable necessity. I mean, it existed already for a long time. In my lifetime, the art market has changed a lot. When I was young, it was much smaller. There was more silence. I think I often thought if I would be a young artist these days, on one hand, there would be an advantage because there's so much curiosity in visual arts compared to 40 years ago or 45 years ago. The art market, or not the art market, but the number of artists, of galleries, of biennials, of museums has increased so much that it's the first question for me is always, when I look at something I don't know yet, is I behave like a kind of a doctor with a stethoscope. With my eyes on my heart and my brain, I attach it to what I see, and I first think, what's the degree of truth, or what's the inherent reasoning that was active in before this piece of art came to physical reality, yeah, that's something. And there's many works where I feel I don't know why they exist. I think that art is sometimes overestimated. I think that art does not have to be placed on so many things, on so many contexts to make something better that's not good, or like to improve situations, which sometimes it does, of course, or very oftentimes it did and still does, but oftentimes it does not, and then I think it's not necessary to be there. Well, I think the so-called secondary market has a certain influence. I mean, the different sides of this. On one hand, the auction houses and the secondary market, you inevitably also determines the prices. So that's just what the market does. You have a work. I mean, in my case, let's say 20 years ago, there was an incident where somebody bought something for, let's say, 30,000 and then gave it to an auction like 9 months later, and it was auctioned for 240,000. Then of course you have a problem, because what do you do then? Or do you follow this, or then you raise the prices a bit more, but you don't want to, you become a profit maker for other people. I mean, like the art market does, but it's not, you don't want to let that happen all the time. Originally, the assumption was that people, museums and collectors buy the artwork to live with it, and to preserve it and so forth. And on one hand, it's understandable that the lives of people change, and they own something for 20 years, and then they want to sell it. But that's never nice for the artist. The situation with the droit de suite is that, for example, in Europe, here you get a small percentage of money from all the auction results, that are made in London or Paris or in Germany. But for example, in America, it's not like that. I find that the percentage is a bit too small, so I think it should be maybe like 100% more or something like that. This is a question that has to be negotiated in a certain way. I mean, the art market is a very unusual place because of the absence of your contracts. I mean, I've never had a contract with any of the galleries I work with. It's all like just agreement, like an oral agreement between the gallerists and myself. And on one side, that's something wonderful because it relies on trust and mutual respect. So that's a wonderful situation. My brother is a judge, so he's a lawyer and a judge, and he always laughs and says, "This is the incredible milieu because there's hundreds of millions that go over the table every year, but there's practically no contracts." Which is extremely unusual. I work with Marion Goodman and Max Hetzler, just to name two examples, for a very long time, with Max since 1986 and with Marion since 1989. And we know each other very well. I mean, we know each other very well as artists and dealers and gallerists, but also like politically and just the private life, which is somehow inevitable because it's a personal relationship also. And we trust each other a lot, so there's a very trustful relationship. With Marion Goodman, there's a very particular section of artists in the gallery. There's a little bit like a family situation where everybody respects each other, like by and large. It's similar with Max's group of artists, even though he's maybe a bit more expensive and experimental and so forth. Yeah, I think I'm just someone who doesn't move galleries so easily. So I'm kind of, for me it's important to have a strong relationship that will also go with my experiments or when I change something, so that they're supportive and that they're good advisors. That I can come to them with questions that I have not so part about my work, but how to deal with the invitations that I get. Does it make sense? What do you think about this? And also as the first spectators of my work, the first critics of my work, when I have something new to see, is that would they support this, and even like if they wouldn't, then to ask them why, what do you think about it? Also, there are very selective people who I trust a lot, or whose opinion means a lot to me, and that sort of give me feels like maybe you help me to overcome my own uncertainty, or so of course my wife, because she's what I do first, and she's kind of a critical pusher in certain situations. Says that's good, but you have to go further. You have to sort of that's not enough, something like that. And then of course the man and Max, I haven't play a particular role in this. Then I've my publisher Lothar Schirmer is someone whose relationship to art is extremely deep and extremely knowledgeable and complex. And then there's a few other friends of mine who I know for a long time, and where I know that they tell me what they think. They don't have to flatter me, or they don't have to they don't have to please me or anything like that. So so that's that's quite important. But of course, I'm very self-critical. So I'm not. I'm my first critic. So which I think, especially with photography, or let's say if the means you use of photographs, it's very important because it's so it's you really have to. You ask your production, every piece, is that really what I mean, or is that, how does that work, or so, and is it really, which of the pictures I made really fulfill what I wanted, and that's also sometimes not so easy to find out. So like sometimes I have to live with something for quite a long time, and then I might reject it because I feel, well, like it doesn't hold up enough, or it's maybe what I thought was too simple, or is kind of, you tend to attach yourself to something I didn't really mean, or it could also happen that it goes into another direction. It could be in a body of work that have 5 pictures that I think were exactly what I meant, but then I kind of stretch it out, and there's some exceptions of the rule that makes the rule more visible. To do a very big exhibition, which you might call a retrospective, takes maybe a preparation time of 2 years or so, and then partly it requires building. It's a complicated process. You have the given spaces, and then you have to make selection of work. You have to see how it works and how it should be orchestrated in the different venues. Sometimes I build a rather large-scale maquette of the spaces to figure out how the position of the works could go. Then, of course, it depends on where the exhibition takes place and in which cultural setting. If everything should be included, or like excerpts of everything I've done, or just a particular theme. For example, I did a larger exhibition that was called Nature and Politics, that started in Essen and went to Berlin, and then to 3 venues in America, in Atlanta, Houston, and St. Louis. That was just one body of work, or like a retrospective of one body of work, which for me is sort of a bit more simple in a way, and less demanding. If it's a larger retrospective with several bodies of work, it gets complicated because the work it resonates differently. Every single body of work resonates and functions very differently in space. I was trained, or I grew up with minimal and conceptual art, where the awareness of the artwork itself and the placement of it and how that works together was a very fantastic school to go through, and so that means that I'm extremely aware of how my work should be installed and what's the best placement of every single photograph in a big show, which very often leads to, even if I have the selection and I build a model and so forth, I still change sometimes a lot in the space to find the best resonating location of every work in the entire space. I think my ideal of a contemporary art museum is a little bit difficult to manifest. I think it should have a kind of a small entrance and big spaces for the artwork, and I think the architecture should not be driven by vanity. It should be simple. I would like that the lighting systems would be non-prominent as pieces of sculpture from the ceiling. I think it would need different sizes of spaces for more intimate observation and for more grand orchestration. I think it would be good if it had some kind of silence around it. It could also be a different urban kind of museum that would be surrounded by city activity and lots of people. And in the past I liked spaces that are like project rooms. Like porticos in Frankfurt, which is you come in, you have one space, and there's no things cannot hide, or so you make maneuvers that are, you distract from kind of truth. I think it would be good if exhibitions you would last long. I think that exhibitions could last like 8 months or 7 months. That people have sort of that they sit and settle, and then many people can see them. When you go to any museum or these days, you see a lot of people who, when they see something, like a second later, they take their phone out of the pocket and make a photograph, and then instead of looking at the work, they walk away. So it's a strange, you're hunting and catching of things without really looking at them. So I would maybe add to the ideal museum that it's mandatory for the audience that they leave their phones and their cameras in the lockers. That just would be a worthwhile attempt to make that a rule. It seems to be that people are overwhelmed by the presence of a work, and then they think they have to keep a pictorial memory for themselves in their own private device to look at it later, because it's kind of, I don't really know what the overall psychological palette of reasons is why people do that, but it's kind of worrisome in a certain way. The question of social responsibility as an artist is, in my opinion, easily answered. Is that my responsibility towards other people is represented by my work, and by that I only publish something that I really mean. So I'm sort of I hope that my work teaches in a certain way by the manner of observation, or by the selections and the choices I make. And I was a teacher like 25 years ago for 3 years, and I enjoyed it. And I work sometimes. I have interns at the studio for 3 months each time, and then there's certain rules there's certain things that I do in contact with them. They come with me photographing a few times, and they do a project during that time. So I'm teaching in that respect. I'm teaching sometimes at the studio, but I'm a contemporary participant in our time, and I react, and so speak through my work. And when you speak. When you speak, anybody can learn, can respond, or can use what I have to say and do something with it as they wish. And I think that's the great side of art and music and literature, is that it's a kind of space of a certain freedom of consideration and dialogue and conversation, that is not propaganda, that is not, but the audience, the reader, the spectator has a certain kind of freedom in a way to connect, to talk about it with other people, and just as a field of reflection, both intellectual and emotional. And I think that's a very that's a good quality. I think my work is always political in one way or another, but it's not propagandistic. I don't like easy suggestions in one direction or another. And I'm not avoiding it, but I hope that my political opinions are sort of embedded in my choices and the result of what I looked at, how I edited it, and how it can be read. In Israel and Palestine, it was a particular challenge in a way to to make choices or to find reasons what to photograph and how to frame it and which kind of pictures I selected from the many pictures I took. I mean, I took like maybe 2,000 pictures, just snapshots while I was traveling and while I was thinking about it, and then to find out which of those snapshots stayed in my memory in a way, didn't fade or didn't get rejected, and so slowly I narrowed it down, and in the end there were like 17 or 18 pictures from I think 8 visits or so, and it was a particularly long process. If you ask me what the development of the curve of a process is, the first thing is to identify a reason why I want to do something, that particular body of work or that kind of narrative. It becomes important to me, or that kind of problem also that I would like to talk about or evaluate and so forth. And this time of sitting with the question of what are my reasons is very important in the beginning, because I have many ideas all the time, but I don't like idea art. Because it's like many people have a very fluid and smart mind, so they can have ideas every morning, but they don't all need to have. They don't need to be materialized all the time. And then, but that also, then you have to sort of. The thing is you start working and materializing the work and starting to produce the work. I'm still examining, does that fulfill my reasoning or what I initially thought, and how does it work? For example, with these pictures of the animals, I came along a process to start doing this, but then when I photographed the first animal, the sheep here, which turned out to be just a picture of the head of a sheep with an open eye, because it had died that morning. Then I started to see how it could function. So as I'm going along and I'm producing the work, I'm still always testing it with whether that still fits with what I thought, what my desire was, what I wanted to do. And then also I know quite well, for example, when I photographed streets and cities, I knew that would be a work that can include a lot of work, would become a very big body of work. Family portraits, it's also something I'm always interested in, and if the number of family pictures I made becomes bigger and bigger, it gets more and more interesting, because you can make different comparisons and so forth. But there's certain bodies of work where I knew this is more like a statement. For example, photographing jungle, the new pictures of paradise, I knew there might be 35 pictures, or 40, and that's it. And these pictures of dead animals, this is also, I'm quite certain will have maybe 40, 50 pictures, and it doesn't need 200 pictures because it's not an encyclopedia of animals. That's not what I want.